going on, Fourth and Inches podcast listeners? You got Dan, Kevin, Stevie P coming at you. What's up, fellas?
What's going on, Dan? What's going on, Kev? What's going on, listeners?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
All right, so today we will continue our divisional breakdowns. We will go into the AFC West like we talked about the other day, so we can get some of the big news items, kind of covered. But first, let's remind you, if you're listening, check out the website. It is www.fourthandinchesff.com. It is www.4thandinchesff.com. Bunch of content on there. You got articles, you got blogs, player profiles, and then you can subscribe to our draft guide, which contains the decision maker. It's basically a tiered out guideline for your drafting purposes. There's 3 different styles if you want to be a little more risky, a little more conservative, or somewhere in between. We got, different styles of drafting on there. And also the cheat codes, all 32. It's a great visual breakdown of every team stats from last year. Basically all the information you're going to need to, help your team win fantasy championships. So with that being the case, we are going to move forward into the AFC West. We are going to start with the Denver Broncos. So let's go with Phillip Lindsay, Royce Freeman. Do we think Phillip Lindsay is going to be the number one guy? Do we think Royce Freeman is going to make it more of a 50-50 split? How do you guys feel about that?
The Denver Broncos has actually already come out and said that it's definitely going to be a more balanced running duo. There's definitely not going to be a single guy carrying the ball a whole lot. So I think we can kind of put that to bed. Who's going to, I definitely think Lindsay will get, I think it could be like a 55-45 split, where Lindsay gets a little bit more of the touches because he's a little more dynamic. But I think this is going to be pretty even. I don't think one guy is going to get way more carries than the other guy. And I think Royce Freeman is going to be the goal line guy. I think they like him in that role. I think he is, he's a beast. If you look at his broken tackle rate last year, it was one of the highest in the league. Running behind an offensive line that really was banged up all season long last year. They had a lot of injuries in their offensive line, and it showed in games that they didn't have their offensive line. Royce Freeman, in games when their line was healthy, Royce Freeman had good games and Lindsay had good games. And then in games that their line was not as healthy or, they had injuries, you could see, they were doing a lot more stretch plays, a lot more, outside zone running and things like that. So, for me, I definitely think it's going to be a much more even split than it was last year. And, and that's the reason why I like Royce Freeman later in the draft. You can get him almost 5 rounds later than where you're getting Lindsay.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think it's probably 60-40, we're in that 55-45 range, Steve, just like you said, with, Lindsay getting just a touch more shares. But I like Royce Freeman a lot. I think he's just way too talented to be off the field for long stretches of time. He's going to have, just like he has the last few years, he's going to have strong games where he's going to demand the ball. And they're going to ride the hot hand. And I think, from game to game or even from drive to drive, it's going to just come down to who's making plays, and they're both talented guys. So I think your value is better with Freeman where he's at, because he's going to, he's going to get more work than he did last year. He didn't get a ton last year. For Lindsay pretty much took over as the number one, by far the number one. So, but I think Freeman, Lindsay will still be number one, but Freeman will definitely cut into that workload a lot.
Yeah, see, I actually think it's going to be very similar to last year. And you said 55-45, Steve. If you look at the cheat codes, all 32 here, between the two of them, there was a total of 322 carries. Phillip Lindsay got 192. Royce Freeman got 130. That is 55-45. I didn't know it didn't feel that way last year, and probably because Phillip Lindsay did miss a game at the end, but Royce Freeman also missed a couple games in the season. It felt a lot like Phillip Lindsay was getting a lot more work than what the numbers indicate. So I think it could be very similar last year. I think when the passing game comes, it was actually interesting looking at it. Devontae Booker actually led the team in targets last year. Philip Lindsay was second with 47 targets. I don't think Devontae Booker is going to be on the field as much. I hope he's not on the field as much. So if that's the case, I could see Philip Lindsay being more of the receiving back than I would see Royce Freeman, who only had 20 targets. And if that's the case, I still think it's going to be very similar to last year, barring any changes. I mean, Lindsay showed he's a very dynamic back. He had averaged 5.4 yards a carry last year. Royce Freeman showed that he can still average 4 yards a carry. Everybody on the team averaged over 4 yards a carry. So, the team had a very successful running game last year. I think it could be much similar to the way it was, even though, like I said, it didn't seem like last year Royce Freeman was getting the ball as much. But if you look at the statistical breakdown, it pretty much was 55-45 last year.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but it's a new coaching scheme. I think looking at, I see what you're saying, but Lindsay did have 47 catches to Royce's 20. So really, Lindsay ended up having, at the end of the day, it's basically like 225, like 225 touches in the season. I just don't feel like.
But that's kind of my argument. Like, I don't think Royce Freeman's going to cut into Philip Lindsay's receiving workload. If anything, Philip Lindsay may go up more because Devontae Booker had so much of a receiving workload last year, and I hope that's not the case this year. Like, I'd much rather see Philip Lindsay on the field more than I would see Devontae Booker. So, like, I don't see Royce Freeman cutting into either one of the receiving totals that much. So, unless Freeman's picking up in the running game, I don't see how it changes too much from last year, unless, of course, like Freeman just, he shows that he can be that dynamic back, more of a power back, which you've said in the past. Like, Vic Fangio is going to want to be more of a power run game and, kind of develop that kind of tempo. But I think it's hard to just take a guy like Philip Lindsay off the field unless he shows that last year was just kind of a one-hit wonder, and he's really not that dynamic. He just had a one good year. But with the way he played last year, it's hard to just take that guy off the field and say, you're not the number one back.
No, I hear you. And like I said, I do think Lindsay is going to be used a little bit more than Royce. I just don't feel like what he did last year is repeatable. I just feel like the way that offense is.
I do agree with that. I do think that Philip Lindsay is a regression candidate, just because of he was just having big plays, and it's like at one point I think he kind of tailed off at the end of the year, but at one point I think he was up over 6 yards per carry. So that's a ridiculous yards per carry average. Like, Jamal Charles is the quintessential yards per carry back, and he wasn't averaging 6 yards per carry. So I could definitely see a little regression, but like I said, starting off the year, it's definitely going to start with a much similar pace the way it was last year. I feel like, kind of 55-45 with Philip Lindsay getting the receiving work.
Yeah, and you're also talking about in the red zone. You got Royce Freeman had 17 carries inside the 20, and then 8 carries inside the 10. You had Philip Lindsay get 26 carries inside the 20, and then 13 carries inside the 10. I think that'll be completely reversed. I just don't feel like, Vic Fangio is going to say, "Oh yeah, we need Lindsay back there," when we have a 200 and almost 30-pound back in Royce Freeman. Especially coming off a wrist injury that. Basically it's basically the same injury that David Johnson had, put him out for the entire year. And we got to remember that Lindsay was hurt in week 15. He got hurt really late in the season. So, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know if Philip Lindsay is going to be out or he's fully healthy. He's saying that he's fully healthy, but
he's fully go to start camp. They got him taking all the first team reps right now.
Yeah, so like I said, we'll see. I think it's gonna be a lot. I think it wasn't exactly 55-45. It was more like, according to the cheat codes, it was 35-50. What does it say here? It was 35% 34% Royce Freeman, 50% Lindsey. And that's just in carries alone. So, you know, I don't think that's, I think that's 15, he's 15% more carries for Lindsey. I just don't see it.
It was 60-40. It was 60-40. It was 59% went to 59.6% went to Philip Lindsay, and the rest went to Freeman. Obviously, Booker. I didn't count Booker's, rushing in there at all. So,
and I still think they didn't get rid of Booker, so I still think he's going to get some touch.
Booker seemed like the guy, like when they were just out of the game at completely blown out, they just threw Devontae Booker in there. That's the way I remember the Broncos last year, because I was a Philip Lindsay owner, and that used to crush me. Is when the Broncos got blown out, they just threw Devontae Booker in there and said, "Here, go get your workload now." So that could happen a lot this year again, but I don't think Vic Fangio's trying to go in there saying we're going to get blown out. Let's just throw Devontae Booker in there. I don't know.
Definitely not.
I don't know how much work Booker gets, but that'll be definitely something we want to watch, through training camp, through the preseason, and definitely as the season starts, like what's going on between Philip Lindsay and Royce Freeman, and if that's similar to last year, if that changes at all. It's definitely something you guys want to keep your eye on.
Yes, sir.
Let's get into Emmanuel Sanders a little bit. Right now, he is going in the 11th round at pick number 2. We've already seen video. He's running routes. He's making cuts. He's only 7 months really off of that Achilles injury. Torn Achilles is actually worse than a torn ACL, especially for a wide receiver who's got to use that for making quick breaks, and you're using your feet. It's basically what you're, if you ever watch somebody tear their Achilles, they go down and they grab like that almost that bone in the back of your foot, like that connects your heel to your leg. It seems a lot more gruesome to me even than an ACL, because the ACLs, unless you actually visually see it, like Klay Thompson this year in the NBA, like that was just nasty, the way his knee buckled. But how do you guys feel about Emmanuel Sanders? Do you think he's worth a shot in the 11th round?
No, to me, no. I mean, I'm going to stay away from Emmanuel Sanders. It's too risky. He's got the injury. He's getting up there in age, slower. He's got Flacco throwing to him, who's obviously hasn't had any kind of decent years pretty much since the year after a Super Bowl MVP. So it's just, to me, there's not a good situation going on there. I don't think he's going to be relevant. I think even around 10, 11, wherever he's projected at, is still too high. I think you can get way better value in the wide receiver spot than him.
Yeah, just looking at his numbers from last year, he
was a beast.
Yeah,
last year.
he had a really good season.
When he got hurt, he was the number 15 wide receiver in fantasy.
Yeah, he was having a good season. I mean, look at the numbers. You also got to remember that Case Keenum was their quarterback last year, so it's not like he had some kind of Pro Bowl quarterback throwing him the ball.
He ain't getting no better this year, brother.
No, it's definitely not. But when you look, it's impressive when you look at his numbers, because it's 98 targets for 71 catches with Case Keenum throwing you the ball. That's pretty good.
That was in 12 games, right? I think he played 12 games.
12 games. Yeah.
It was. He got hurt. He got hurt after week 13, but that's
if you extrapolate that, that's a 1,200, 1,300 yard season. About a 1,200 yard season. So it's a good season. He actually had he had a good season. I just don't like the situation this year with the injury. It's mainly coming down to the injury for me, and I'm just not buying the Joe Flacco, because we have not seen this guy perform in years.
I just, looking at this team, I don't know. I feel two ways about this team. I think this team is either going to be really good and surprise people, or it's going to be complete shit. Like, there's no in between with this team. I either think this team is going to be fucking really good or just really fucking bad, because
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah,
100% agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard for me to figure out which one of those is going to be. So I don't know how attached I want to be to this team. I definitely know I want their defense, because any team that is coached by Vic Fangio, I want that defense. So when you have Von Miller and when you have the defensive pieces that this team has, this team's going to be a good defensive team, period. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that this team is a top 10 defense, period. So
they were a good defense before they got Vic Fangio. So I mean, you're just basically you're taking his system and you're with a super talented roster. The defense for sure. I mean, I think people are overlooking how good this defense could definitely finish in the top 3 without question.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think with just the pieces on this defense, they're going to be good. You know, I mean, Vic Fangio is going to put them in a place where, you know, they're going to be, because I don't think the Chicago Bears, talent-wise, other than Khalil Mack and a couple other pieces that they had, were really all that good. I thought they were just an okay defense. And the year before that, they were just an okay defense. You know what I mean? Fangio put them in a spot where they were really, really good last year. And I think he could do the same thing to this Broncos defense. So if that's the case, then maybe you do want to take Lindsey and Emmanuel Sanders and all these guys, because they're all going to be, to me, they're going to be viable. I mean, Cortland Sutton, I think of any of the guys that I'm worried about, it's Cortland Sutton. You know what I mean? I think Emmanuel Sanders, if by the end of training camp, right now we're just speculating. We don't know if he's going to be healthy or not. But if by the end of training camp he shows that he's healthy and we're all watching him run routes and we're all watching him in the preseason play and they're letting him play, then I'm going to take him, because Joe Flacco, you know, Emmanuel Sanders plays in the slot a lot. We all have watched Joe Flacco really target slot tight, targets. So Emmanuel Sanders could be good. He could also, Noah Fant could be good because he likes to target tight ends also. So, you know, I don't, these are not guys that I'm taking like super high, but in the 11th round, I'll take a flyer on them.
Yeah, I think it's a good flyer, honestly, as well. Just looking what he did last year, I mean, if he's able to get back healthy, and he's probably not going to be himself, at least for the first half of the season. I mean, that Achilles injury is usually almost a guarantee 9 weeks, and even after that 9 weeks, 9 months. And even after that 9 months, you still need time to get yourself back, get your confidence back, all that. So, you know, if you're drafting him in the 11th round, you don't really need him to shine right away. Now, he might be a guy you wind up dropping if your team is not doing well and you need to hit the waiver wire. He might be a guy that he's probably one of your first candidates you're going to be dropping. But if you're drafting and it's 11th round, he's probably a good flyer to take. And like Steve said, he plays the slot. So that's Joe Flacco's specialty. I mean, they do have Deshaun Hamilton, who's another slot guy. If you got Emmanuel Sanders there healthy, I don't think you're putting Deshaun Hamilton over him. Cortland Sutton, you said you're worried about Cortland Sutton, Steve. Is that because, you know, Flacco, the Flacco thing, or any other reason why you're worried about Cortland Sutton?
I just watching him last season, I wasn't impressed. You know what I mean? I think, honestly, I wasn't impressed with him in college either. You know what I mean? I thought Cooper Kupp was the way better wide receiver on the same team, and I was proved right on that one. So, you know, and me and you talked about it, Kev. You know what I mean? We talked about it last year, how high I was on Cooper Kupp and how I thought he was really dynamic. And you know, I think we had a conversation about Cortland Sutton, too, on our waiver wire podcast that, you know, when we found out that Demaryius Thomas was getting traded, you know, I was saying that I think is somebody that you should definitely go get if you're wide receiver needy, but not somebody that I think is going to be a life-changing, you know, wide receiver like some fantasy analysts were saying. Some fantasy analysts were saying you have to put all of your fab dollars, every last penny you have, to get Cortland Sutton on your team because he could be, you know, a game changer. And I just, with Case Keenum throwing him the ball and just his, I guess, array of route tree, I just didn't see a guy that was going to change anyone's fantasy team. And it ended up being that way.
I don't think his route tree really wasn't wide range.
No,
it was down the field and
cross, fade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, post,
yeah,
fly. That's, I mean, it's basically what he did. He had 4 routes that he He had 4 or 5 routes that he was like a mainstay on, and then everything else. And I'll tell you what, I didn't see him really separate at all after Demaryius Thomas was gone. You know what I mean? Like when he was getting, second string cornerbacks and third, slot guys, when they were throwing him in the slot, moving him around the formation, he was getting, open. Like on some of his long bombs, it was just like a cross route across the entire field, and Case Keenum had all day to kind of, run around and throw him the ball down the field. But I don't know. Cortland Sutton, I'm just not very big on.
Yeah, he doesn't do anything really for me either. I mean, we all have those teams that, with the rising stars that we ooze over, and just Denver as a whole. I mean, I don't see anything out of it right now. He's just another player. I mean, I'm obviously the Emmanuel Sanders is based on the injuries, why I would probably stay away from him. But I just don't. I mean, I could just see it. I could see another 600-700 yard season out of Sutton with another 4 touchdowns, and that's pretty much, that's not fantasy relevant. That's getting you, if you're lucky, that's getting you 5 to 10 points. For someone to sit there as a, even in a flex spot, it's not going to be productive. So I'm not high on Sutton either.
And with this is the other thing. Cortland Sutton saw 84 targets last year and caught 42 of them. That's exactly 50%. He caught 50% of his targets, and I'm not saying that Case Keenum is, the greatest quarterback ever, but when you look at some of the other guys that got the split in targets, Emmanuel Sanders had 98 targets for 71 catches. Demaryius Thomas had 56 catches for 36, for 36 catches, 56 targets for 36 receptions. Some of the other guys are in the 60-70% catch range, as where Cortland Sutton is in the 50% catch range. So, I don't know if that has to do with they were just chucking the ball downfield to him, which is not what I saw. You know what I mean?
I was gonna say that seemed like what he was, though. I mean, just a big guy that was running down the field, and they would air it up. They would just toss it up to him, and he didn't seem to me like he was very good at going up and getting the ball over some of these cornerbacks. Maybe he improves in his second year. I mean, maybe it's something you want to watch, but yeah, Cortland Sutton's not a guy I've really been taking a flyer on in many mock drafts. Deshaun Hamilton, either one of you in PPR flyer at the end of the draft.
Yeah, late round guy. I mean, you don't know if
just watch Sanders.
Yeah, you don't know if Emmanuel Sanders is going to be healthy. If he's healthy, then yeah, I want him. If not, then in a super deep league, I'll take him.
Yeah, he disappointed me a little last year. I mean, his senior year at Penn State, he was awesome. I remember watching him, and I thought he was going to be a big time player in this league, and he might still come into his own, but just disappointing last year. But maybe a flyer. Just depends on how deep I am at wide receiver, in that draft. But that's about it. Very, very late round, like you said, Steve. Maybe take into consideration how Emmanuel Sanders is coming along. So really, I mean, there's not a whole lot really to say about Deshaun. He didn't really have a very productive year for his rookie year.
All right, so if you're drafting Joe Flacco, your team is probably going to go 0-16 and miss them. No, but in 2 quarterback leagues, Joe Flacco, he's probably still somebody that you don't really want. But if you're, if you're going to roster him, go ahead, take a shot. I mean, it's
as a third string guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's almost irrelevant in fantasy.
He's going in the same area as like your Dwayne Haskins, and I'd rather do like a Dwayne Haskins because you don't know what you're going to get out of Haskins. He could blow up and be, a rookie of the year, but you probably know what you're going to get out of Flacco.
Yeah, for me, I would probably rather have Eli Manning than him. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's Eli. I think if they're in it, they're not going to throw. I don't think everybody's saying that Jones is going to play this year. I think if they're like 5-1 or 1-5 or something like that, crazy, where they're just getting their asses romped, then yeah, I think Jones will play. But I don't think the Giants are going to be that bad of a team this year. I really do think that they're going to be just okay. I think they'll finish 8-8, and if that's the case, then I don't see Jones seeing the field, so I'd rather have Eli.
All right, so we'll move on to Kansas City now, and we're going to start off with Tyreek Hill. We kind of talked about Tyreek Hill the situation the other day. I don't really want to get into that because we discussed that, So let's just talk about him from the fantasy aspect. I've been doing mock drafts over the past few days, trying to gauge his value a little bit. I actually did a league yesterday where he was the 5th player overall selected. Right after the top 4 running backs, they took Tyreek Hill. I thought that was incredibly high. I have him as my 5th ranked receiver right now, right ahead of Odell Beckham. That probably puts him at the beginning of the 2nd round for me. How do you guys feel? What's his value?
Tyreek Hill could finish as the number 1 wide receiver. He is just that good. The problem is, in non-PPR, you can't trust the touchdowns he had last year. He had, 13 touchdowns last year. That's a lot. He is definitely really targeted. 137 targets last year, 87 receptions for 1,479 yards. We all know that he's, anywhere from 16 to 17 yards per reception guy. He's basically, Patrick Mahomes' second favorite target behind Travis Kelce, obviously. But for me, he has really huge games. Like, he blows the fuck up. And then in other games, he's just okay. And if he doesn't have those 4 or 5 blow-up games and that turns into 2 or 3 blow-up games, then, he's, to me, outside of the top 6 guys, he's, maybe 6, 7. So, he is a very, for a guy that everybody's taking super, super high, and especially now because, coming off of finding out that he's not going to be suspended, I think a lot of people are like crazy high on him right now.
Yeah, everybody's jumping off. Everybody's going overboard. It's ridiculous. It's really like he's not a first round pick. Let me just say that right off the rip. He's not a first round pick. All right, Tyreek Hill should not be going in the first round.
No, I think 2nd round is accurate, but he's in the news right now. So in the mock drafts, you're going to see people jumping at him because he's the hot name right now. But there's just, if you look at how good that team was statistically last year, there has to be some kind of regression somewhere. And I don't think Tyreek Hill's putting up 1,500 yards and 13 touchdowns again. Maybe he does. He is that talented where he can repeat that every year, but there's got to be somebody's got to regress on that team. There's game footage on them now. You have game footage on Mahomes. So, I would think I would put him in the 2nd round. I definitely think he's worth that all day long. He's gonna have a great season. He's playing all 16 now. He's gonna have an incredible season, just because that off, Andy Reid, play calling, Mahomes, the gifted kid. So I just think that I think if you're taking him in the 1st round, you're blowing your load a little too much on the Kool-Aid. I think you get with the top 3 guys. I think you're a little safer with the top 3 than you are, or even your Saquon, than you are with Tyreek.
Yeah, definitely. And this is the other thing. So I'm trying to pull up Sammy Watkins' deal because I think Sammy Watkins got a 4-year deal. So Tyreek Hill is a free agent at the end of this season, which, he wants his deal now. This is why, before this whole shit happened where, with the kid and everything, he was trying to get a new deal.
Yeah.
And he wants to be the highest paid wide receiver in football, which
I'm good.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold on. Let's just like I seem like I'm taking a shit on Tyreek Hill. I'm really not. Like, the dude is a beast. Like, he is the best threat wide receiver in the NFL, bar none, by tenfold. Like, you hear people talking about Deshaun Jackson like he's the best deep threat. He is nowhere near Tyreek Hill at this point in his career. Tyreek Hill is, especially with Mahomes as quarterback, Mahomes is like probably the one guy that can't overthrow Tyreek Hill. Or Tyreek Hill's probably the one guy that Matt Mahomes cannot overthrow. But, looking at what he did last year, like 5 more touchdowns than the year before, 300 more yards than the year before. Like, I think what you see in 2017 is a little more Tyreek Hill, and that's probably more likely. And I don't think that last year wouldn't have had him in the top he would have been in the top 10 probably, but not. He wouldn't have been the number one in standard leagues.
I think he'll be somewhere between 17 and 18 stats. That's where I got him at.
Yeah, so looking at Sammy Watkins' deal, right? Sammy Watkins still has 3 years left on his deal. It was a $48 million deal. He's got $16 million annual, and he's got $30 million guaranteed. His contract's not up until 2021. I'm pretty sure that they went into this draft thinking, Tyree, we have Sammy. If he can prove this year that he stays healthy, then we're going to use McCole Harmon next year, and we're going to get rid of Tyreek Hill. So I think Sammy Watkins still will get a little more targets. I think, he's only 26 years old. I think a lot of people, look at Sammy and think, oh man, this dude's been in the league forever.
Who was the dude we said that about somebody the other day?
Brandon Cooks.
Brandon Cooks. Yep.
Yeah, similar.
Yeah. And
It's the switching of the teams that throws you off. That's what I think it is. When you play with a couple of is this his third team now?
Yep.
They were drafted the same year?
Yep.
Okay, so that's the Odell Beckham, Mike Evans, all those guys in that year.
Yep.
And then this is his third team, right, Steve? He was Buffalo, Rams, and now
Rams, and then
Yeah, so it kind of tricks with your mind the same way that Brandon Cooks does with the 3 teams and a couple years with each team. It seems like they play a lot longer than what they're actually in the league at.
Yeah, that was if you think about that draft was just fucking bananas. That draft had wide receivers out the wazoo. And I think Sammy and everyone, I don't give a fuck who you are. If you didn't think Sammy Watkins was the best of those wide receivers coming out of college, you're lying to yourself. Because that dude, what he did in college was just bananas. He was so far and away the best wide receiver coming out of that draft. It wasn't funny. He was awesome. So, if he can stay, and he's a fucking nutball, I'll give you that all day. He thinks he's a fucking lizard, and he believes in flat Earth. Yeah, so I'm not saying this is the most intelligent motherfucker on the planet, but he's fucking super talented. So if with Patrick Mahomes, as good as he is, if he can get some kind of rapport with Sammy Watkins, and they have a whole nother offseason to go together and figure out each other's movements and all that shit. If this year Sammy Watkins shows that he's a good receiver, Tyreek Hill's going to lose targets, and I still want Sammy going where he's going. He's going like the 6th, 7th round now that Tyreek Hill's back.
I was just going to say he's going in the 7th round at pick 5. I love that value for Sammy Watkins because if he stays healthy, like you said, he is extremely talented. And what people don't even realize, and I understand the production's been Odell Beckham has actually missed more games than Sammy Watkins in his career. Yeah. That's actually crazy because nobody looks at Odell Beckham and says, "Oh, he's such an injury risk. We can't draft him in the 2nd round." It's because he puts up better production than Sammy Watkins, but Sammy Watkins has the ability to put up Odell Beckham type numbers. So, definitely a guy in the 7th round right now. With Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback and that offense, he's undoubtedly a great 7th round pick. I'm glad we're kind of talking about Sammy Watkins. We can kind of get rid of, and get him out of the way now. But yeah, I think Sammy Watkins in the 7th round is great.
Yeah, okay, so his rookie season was his only season where he played all 16 games. In that season, he had 128 targets because they just tried to shock him full of fucking targets because Buffalo was terrible that year. But 128 targets, 65 receptions, 981 yards, and 6 touchdowns. The year after that, he played 13 games. He had 96 targets, 60 receptions, so his reception, went up. He averaged 17.5 yards a reception. That's 0.5 more than what Tyreek Hill averaged last year. He had 9 touchdowns in that season. Then he played eight games, 52, 28, 430, and 2 touchdowns. Then he had a 14-game season. He left early in one game, didn't start another one. But he had 70 targets, 39 receptions, 593 yards, and 8 touchdowns. That was the year with the Rams. So, and last year, he only played 10 games. He started 9 of them. He had 55 targets. He had 40 receptions. So he only 55 targets and caught 40 of them. That's a really high percentage. And, he had 3 touchdowns. So, if he gets 100-plus targets, he's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, see, and my thing was, what always comes to mind with Sammy Watkins for me is that play against Darrelle Revis. I don't know if you guys remember it. He spun Darrelle Revis around on a 3rd down that gave them the game at the end. I think it was a Thursday night game. It's the only reason I was watching Jets versus Bills, because it was a Thursday night game and nothing else was on. But I just remember that play, man. He put a move where he he faked left and slanted right. And Darrelle Revis, who is the best quarterback, one of the best cornerbacks in NFL history, was just shaking off his shoes. Like, this guy has the talent, man. If he can stay healthy, he's going to be a beast, especially in this offense.
Yep, I agree.
All right, so I guess we'll dip in. We'll go back to our the running back situation. Oh, you know what? We'll still go back to the tight end, because they do have the best tight end in football. There's not really too much to say about Kelsey. I'll just ask you guys this. Do you think he's worth taking in the first round?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I'd agree.
100%.
You can't even. I mean, he's a tight end by position status, but he is a receiver by statistical performance. He's incredible. I've been fortunate in our league to have him in the last few years. He started. I think the year I drafted him, I got him like 8 or 9, and that's where he was going. No one really. I mean, he was known as the upcoming guy, but he has slowly he's putting up monster year after monster year, and I do not see him slowing down. He's just going to continue to get better with Mahomes. Mahomes. We got to realize Mahomes is only in his 2nd year now, so they're gonna continue to develop this chemistry. They're just two of the top talents in their positions. You can't go wrong with taking Travis Kelce in the first round. He'll put up numbers equal to, your top receivers and running backs.
Okay, so looking at his numbers here, Travis Kelce finished 9 times as the number 1 receiver number 1 tight end last year, and he finished 4 times as 4 times as the number 1 tight end for the week. So let me reword this because I'm saying it wrong. He had 9 top 5 finishes at the tight end position, and he had 4 number 1 finishes at the tight end position. That is a huge advantage. That is a huge advantage when you're talking about fantasy points, because if let's just break it down a little bit. If you have, let's say you're drafting at the 7th spot, I would be 100% okay with you taking him there, because if you look at it, at the 7th spot in a 12-team leaguer, you're probably going to come back and be able to get Dalvin Cook or who else is there at around that the ADP?
Freeman, like Devontae Freeman's.
Devontae Freeman, you get
he's late second. He's like late second.
You can get him in the 3rd.
Antonio, Juju.
Yeah, you get Juju. Oh my God! If you could get Kelce, Juju, see, because you're not going to get Kelce on the way back. That's what you have to think. I mean, on the way back, Kelce ain't dropping to you at the 16th overall pick.
50. Like, there's sometimes I've seen Kelce go into the end of the 2nd round. Then there's times where I see Kelce go in the
early.
To me, if you want that advantage, tight end has been such a wasteland last year. It's kind of a scary position you want to think about. Having to stream throughout the year, because nobody's going to give you an advantage. And we've talked kind of about regression coming from Ertz and Kittle. There's no regression coming from Kelce. He is that damn good. I think Ertz is
the number 1 guy.
Yeah, I think Ertz is that good, but I don't think in this offense he's going to see what he saw last year. And Kittle had a record-setting year. Like, he had the most yards ever by a tight end. That's not going to happen again. So we see regression from those 2 guys. We don't see that regression from Kelce, and that's a huge advantage at that position. So I almost definitely I don't know if I would take him that high at number 7. I probably wouldn't take him over Adams or Hopkins for me. Julio is a question mark. And right now, I would take him ahead of Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon's probably that last running back, and with the way I'm feeling about Melvin Gordon right now, I'll talk about it later. But yeah, I would take Kelsey ahead of Gordon. So basically, I would be taking him around 9-10. That would probably be the time I would start taking Kelsey. And yeah, I almost certainly I think he's a first round pick. Let's move on to Damian Williams. This is one of the guys that has. There's such a wide range of feelings about Damian Williams going into this year. They've already come out and said that he is their number one back, that he's going to be that guy. Andy Reid has always run a one running back system. He's, he did it for years with Westbrook. He did it with Shady. He did it with Jamal Charles. He did it with Kareem Hunt. He runs one guy, and he's had a lot of talent back there. Damian Williams may not have as much talent as those players. Do you think Damian Williams finishes where a lot of people think he people pick him in the middle of the second round? Do you think he has that kind of? He definitely has that kind of upside. But do you think that's where he finishes? Do you think something brings him down, like an injury? He hasn't. 2 years ago he had his shot in Miami. Before Kenyon Drake came on, and he got hurt. He got hurt with a shoulder injury. Played 2 games, hurt his shoulder. And Kenyon Drake came in and took the job. So, he is susceptible to injury. What are your feelings on Damian Williams?
I like Damian Williams. For me, the issue I have with him is just he's got the largest range of outcomes of any of the really good running backs. So.
God, does he?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, literally, he could finish in the top 5, or he could finish in the 30s.
Not a starter.
You know what I mean? He could finish in the 30s because, it's just, you don't know. So, for me, all right, so Damian Williams, if you look, I was actually looking at this because I was surprised. I didn't realize Damian Williams he looks small on the field, but he's actually not that small.
Yeah, that's what I said before. Like he's like 5'11", 215. That's actually bigger than what Brian Westbrook was when he was the Eagles' main running back. Brian Westbrook was 5'11", 205. So he's bigger than I think Westbrook was 5'11", 215. I think Damian Williams might be 225.
Yeah, he is. He's 5'11", 225.
Yeah, so he's actually heavier than Westbrook and same height. Like he's actually bigger than Westbrook. He just looks small on the field.
Yeah, and if you remember, he played for Oklahoma. He actually got cut from the team because he had some shit happen. I can't remember what it was. I remember it was something, and he was actually really good that season. The year he got cut, he was actually playing really well. So it's not like Damian Williams is some off the fucking grid, not drafted guy. He wasn't drafted because of his off the field issues. He wasn't not drafted because he's not good. I mean, he played for Oklahoma. You know what I mean? Like, if you are the starting running back for Oklahoma, we could just run down the list of Oklahoma running backs, Adrian Peterson being at the top of that list. But you could just run down that list of great running backs that Oklahoma has produced. And he was the starting running back for Oklahoma. So it's not like he is some dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he actually can play ball. He just had some off-the-field issues, and teams were like, nah, we're not going to take a chance on this dude. Miami said, okay, we're going to take a chance on him. We're not drafting him. We're just going to sign him. And he ended up being their starter. And then, like Kev said, hurt his shoulder. You know what I mean? And that was the end of that story. Ended up getting shipped off to KC. Sat behind everybody in KC until finally now he's the guy. So, and I'll tell you what, just watching him last year, I know he only had 50 touches towards the end of the season, but he looked damn good to me. You know what I mean? He looked like a guy who was bouncing off tackles. He was, breaking away from guys. He was shifty. He was hard to bring down. And I think the most surprising thing of everything, when you look at the numbers, if you look at his numbers here, the dude was actually carrying the ball. Okay, so in the red zone, if you look, Kareem Hunt had 22 carries inside the 10. Right? Damian Williams only played like the last 5 games of the season. He had 7. Right? He had 7 carries and he had 4 touchdowns, right? And all 7 of those carries were inside the 5. So he had 4 touchdowns out of 7 carries. That's more than 50% of touchdown percentage, right? With the same, Kareem Hunt had 11 carries and he had 6 touchdowns inside the 5-yard line. So basically they were scoring at the same rate. So it's not like Kareem Hunt is like this great goal line back where Damian Williams isn't. Damian Williams was a very good goal line back last year. So, I don't know. To me, if you take him in the early second, I wouldn't blame you because I think he has that kind of upside. But he just scares me a little bit because of, past injuries and him being a little bit of a knucklehead.
Yeah, right now he's going right behind Dalvin Cook. So, that basically the first 2 tiers of running backs, he's either at that bottom of that second tier or top of the third tier. I would probably put him at the bottom of the second tier because I actually think he will be good this year. But yeah, that's kind of where he's going, round 2, pick 8. I don't know. Me and Steve have been kind of laughing about this because we've been doing a lot of mock drafts on ESPN, and ESPN for some reason has him like a 4th round pick, and he's just down there. And all of a sudden, you'll get to like the 3rd round, and you're like, "Holy shit! There's Damian Williams! Like he ain't even, he's still sitting there. Like they have not updated their rankings. Don't think you're getting Damian Williams, and if you're doing mock drafts on ESPN, don't think you're getting Damian Williams in the 4th round come draft time. It's just not happening. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the more I look at this kid, and the more I'm looking into, into the Chiefs, potent offense, the more I like him. I mean, I'm more of the conservative. I would like a more stable guy in that pick, but he's someone that I would probably do a flyer on, and he's in the right offense. He's got the right head coach that just he's the clear cut number 1. He's not gonna. I don't think Carlos Hyde is going to cut into his workload too much because Carlos is a little bit older now, and he's. I know Damian's been in the league for a little bit, but he doesn't have a lot of tread on the tires from all the injuries. So I think his ADP is reflected on how good the Chiefs were, and then I think the Chiefs are definitely going to be probably the number 1 output again for offense. So I would definitely take a chance on him. I think he's got so much potential. So, and at first, if you asked me this maybe a month ago when I started looking at him, I was way more scared off being a little more conservative on that at that in that 2nd, 3rd round. But the more I'm looking at it and evaluating it, I would probably take a chance on him in there. I think he'll produce.
Yeah. All right, so let's go into Mahomes, number 1 quarterback last year. I have him ranked number 1 this year. With the Tyreek Hill suspension, have you guys changed that ranking? I know you both had Luck at number 1. Do you have Mahomes now, or do you still have Luck up there?
I would flip him. I would put. I actually had Mahomes. I had Mahomes. I think at number 3. But I think with Hill, he's got back at the top. There's just too much. There's too much talent at the receiving position. I mean, don't get me wrong. Luck is incredible, and I love his receiving core, and I love what they're doing in Indianapolis. I think they have potential to be a Super Bowl contender right now. But there's just so much talent on the Chiefs, and Andy Reid he gets the best out of what his players are. And he knows how to the one for not winning a Super Bowl. He's always going to get knocked for that. But there may not be a better coach that I've ever seen that knows how to work a quarterback and get the best ability out of his quarterback. And he did it with McNabb. I mean, McNabb came in the league and he started off as a runner, and he turned him more into a pocket passer. I mean, Mahomes doesn't really have to be too much of a runner. His kid's got a freaking cannon. So, yeah, I would say that Mahomes probably. I know we bring up the stat a lot of Steve. We said like the last person to finish back to back was Drew Brees. He was the only guy in like the last 10 years.
20 years.
Yeah, 20 years. I think this could be the first time since.
Yeah, I agree.
Did you move him up, or you still got Luck at number?
I haven't changed my ranks this month.
Yeah.
I was actually going to change
I haven't
them.
either. I'm just in my head.
I'm definitely going to move him up. I mean, we talked about this when we did the quarterback podcast. We actually this was actually the exact scenario. Kev said to me, "Would you move him up if Tyreek Hill played the entire season? Would you move him up?" And I said yes. So I'm not flip flopping from that. If Tyreek Hill plays, he's the number one guy. Period. He's just got too much talent on that team, and with Tyreek Hill, that just puts them over the top.
But from a fantasy standpoint now, he's still too early for quarterback for us. I mean, I know for me and Steve, Dan, I know you're the guy that seems that you would reach on quarterback a little bit. You did with Drew Brees in a recent redraft we have. Where would you say Mahomes would be a good pick for you?
I'm letting someone else take him. I'm still not reaching that far for quarterback. I'm gonna go in that mid tier. I would love to get like Carson Wentz, not only because I'm an Eagles fan, but just because of the incredible year I think he's going to have. But I think that Mahomes he's going too high for where I would want to pick a quarterback at. I'd much rather get a solid running back or a receiver. So I would wait personally and let everyone else goo and ga over him while I sit there and get a higher, an 8 to a rank 8 to 12 kind of guy. I'm real high on Kirk Cousins. I had him last year. He had a really good statistical year. So even though he would be, we just said he's definitely the clear cut number one now that Tyreek Hill's back. I wouldn't reach on him. I'd wait on quarterback.
Yeah, right now his ADP is round 3, pick 6.
Yeah, I figured it was in that mid round 3, and I'm taking a receiver or a running back at that rank spot.
Way too high. So, anything else you want to talk about McCall Hardman? You think he's a flyer or somebody just now that Tyreek Hill's there, you're probably just passing on?
Yeah, I think, I wasn't high on him before Tyreek Hill news, so, I'm not any higher on him now. Just not somebody I'm going to draft.
Yeah, he won't be relevant. There's too many other talent around there. I think we talked about, Sammy Watkins' production probably will go up and too many other guys.
All right, so let's get into the Chargers. All right, I'm going to actually start this one off. All right, Melvin Gordon is going to be the first guy we talk about. Wrote an article, you guys can check it out, comparing the Melvin Gordon to Le'Veon Bell last year. Melvin Gordon was actually a guy who was very hot, very supportive of Le'Veon. So this could be something that winds up being similar. The Chargers in the past have had issues with Joey Bosa, who they, rookies CBA contracts are almost set in stone for what you can get, and they still had a problem getting his deal done to where he missed pretty much the whole preseason. I think he missed games. Did he miss games that rookie year, Joey Bosa?
Yes.
Yeah.
Missed the first.
He missed three or 4 games, right? Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, this, they've replaced running backs almost seamlessly with, going from LT to Ryan Matthews and then into Melvin Gordon. Until this is done, I'm not drafting Melvin Gordon. I was a Le'Veon Bell owner last year. You guys know I had him in our keeper league. He was my first-round pick. That just destroyed my team all year because you're waiting on your number one pick, and you're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and it just never comes around. If you take Melvin Gordon, you better grab Austin Eckler early unless this contract situation is situated because – you do not want to be that guy looking and waiting throughout the season for when your first round pick is going to start performing for you. Like I said, this could all be a moot point come, preseason or first week of the season, because if he gets that contract, then, good for him and he deserves it. He's a great player, but he's just somebody until this is settled, I'm staying away from. Like I said, I moved him down to where I'd be drafting Kelsey ahead of him. I probably wouldn't even be taking him until the second round. And even then, like I said, until it's situated, I'm staying away from Melvin Gordon.
Yeah. And I know you were burned last year with Le'Veon, so, I definitely feel you on that. For me, it's too soon to say that I'm definitely not taking him. I don't know what the contract situation is. It's another thing. Like, you know what I mean? We're giving fantasy analysis for what we know now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what that's what you guys come to us to get. So from what we know now, we don't know shit. You know what I mean? Like,
well, he's not playing.
Exactly. We know he's not practicing now, but
no, he's holding out.
Yeah,
so that's,
but this is the thing. Okay, so this is the thing. If by week, let's say the last week of the preseason, he's still not signed, right? And you start hearing, oh, they're getting back into negotiations. If he signs Saturday of a Sunday week 1, right?
Then he's, like I said, you're all good.
Exactly.
But at that point, you're probably done your fantasy drafts. And if you're most fantasy drafts, I would say, are probably after the third week of preseason. That's probably the week in between, from 2 to the start of week 4 in preseason is probably when most fantasy drafts are taking place. If he's not signed at that point, just coming off the Le'Veon Bell stuff from last year, I don't see how you can take him in the first round. I don't see how you can draft him in the first round.
No, you're definitely not in the first round. You know what I mean?
Especially if you're not hearing any kind of contract negotiations going on.
Well, that's the thing. There's not going to be any kind of negotiations going on. I'm telling you that right now because the Chargers feel like they have all the leverage here. I mean, like it was the same thing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Teams are not going to see
so
that.
All right. So in your mind, you don't think there's going to be any contract negotiations?
Nope. No.
All right. So do you think
not until he starts missing games? I think he could miss games. I definitely think he could miss games. And when he starts missing games, that's when they're going to realize, okay, it's going to be the same. It could be the same thing as Emmitt Smith in what was it? 90.
No, without Melvin Gordon when he got hurt last year.
Justin's
nowhere good as Melvin Gordon, but.
No, they're a good team. That's the thing. Yeah. They don't need Melvin. This is the thing. And this is why I say they're not going to negotiate with him because they're a good team. They can win without him, right? But they need him for the playoffs. Like, if they want to be a Super Bowl team, they need Melvin Gordon, period. Like, I mean, they are a playoff team without him. They are not a Super Bowl team without him. You know what I mean? So if this team wants to win a Super Bowl, fucking Phillip Rivers ain't getting no younger. You know what I mean? Last time I checked, the motherfucker's almost 40 years old. So
still having kids.
Yeah. So at this point, it's either pay this motherfucker to win a Super Bowl or don't pay him and be out in the first round again like they almost always are. So, at some point this is going to get done. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, even if it's until week 10, you know what I mean? Like he might miss games. Now, obviously he's not a first round pick to me, no. But with what happened with Le'Veon Bell, I guarantee you if you hear nothing by week 3 of your draft, I guarantee you he's going to drop into like the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. And guess what? I'm taking him there. There's no doubt in my mind I'm taking him there. I'm definitely not taking him in the first round, and I might not take him in the second round. But by week 3 of your fantasy drafts, he won't be a first or second round pick because of what happened with Le'Veon next year. I can almost guarantee it. He's going to drop way down.
You're talking about the preseason.
In the preseason. By week 3, there's no negotiations, none. Like you don't hear shit. Right? I guarantee you he drops into the 3rd or 4th round because people are going to be so scared about what happened with Le'Veon last year. They're going to be like, fuck this. I'm not taking that, dude. And he's just going to drop and drop and drop and drop and drop. And if he drops and drops and drops and drops and drops in the 3rd or 4th round, I'm taking him because I think I'll be able to draft and trade to make my team good enough that when he comes back to my team, I'm going to win. You know what I mean? Like, I'm winning a championship because I'm getting Melvin Gordon back healthy, missing however many games the fucking guy misses.
Yeah, I think you guys pretty much touched on the whole Melvin Gordon thing. We just don't know anything. We don't know enough right now to place him where he belongs until if he even does sign, or when he does sign, if or when. So, that's basically where I'm at on Melvin. Is just incredible talent, deserves his money. We'll see what he gets.
Yeah, pay that motherfucker for real. See, I'm all for paying fucking running backs. You know what? In this league, they batter these fucking guys. They batter running backs. And then they say, 5 years. See you later. You know what I mean? And that is so fucked up because guess what? There's no fucking position where you get banged up. Well, offensive line. But other than those two positions, there's no skill position where you get banged up like you do with a running back. So these fucking guys should get paid, period.
Yeah, I'm looking at this, and right now he's still even at round 1, pick 10 with Le'Veon Bell. I'd rather have Bell. I'd rather take James Conner. I'd rather take Joe Mixon. I'd rather take Todd Gurley. I'd rather take Dalvin Cook. I'd rather take Damian. Right now, like, I'm not I mean, obviously right now leagues aren't going on. I mean, I've been drafting a few leagues. We've been, just to have fun, some free leagues here and there. But even still, like right now I'm drafting, I'm not taking Melvin Gordon. I'm just not taking him right now. He's still going in the first round. I'm staying away from him. So we'll get into, all right, so let's just talk about, Austin Eckler then. Where do you think Austin Eckler's value rises if Gordon starts to miss time? Where would you be drafting Austin Eckler?
I'm not.
You're not drafting him at all?
No, I don't want if I can't. Okay, so for me on the Chargers, if I can't have Melvin Gordon, I don't want any of them because, and this is why. I'll explain why. I know a lot of people are saying, take him. He's going to go high. He's going to go way higher than I'm willing to take him.
Fifth round yesterday.
Yes.
In the draft I was talking about, Tyreek Hill went 5th overall. Austin Eckler went in the 5th round.
Yeah, no, fuck that. And this is why. And I'm going to tell you why. Okay, so last year, Melvin Gordon was number 17 in rushing yards. He had 885 total yards. Run blocking efficiency for that team was the 31st ranked run blocking team in the NFL. That's fucking terrible. That's really bad. Their offensive line looked good last year only because their offense was so good. Fucking Phillip Rivers was back there.
So good, yeah.
Yeah, Phillip Rivers was back there dumping the shit out of the ball, getting out of his fucking hands as quick as he possibly could, and their run blocking was shit. And Melvin Gordon was fucking awesome. You know what I mean? So for me, Austin Eckler ain't anything close to what Melvin Gordon is. So if I have to take him in, if I can get him in round 10, I'll take him. But I ain't getting him in round 10, so I don't want him. Yeah,
I would probably. I think he's got an ADP. Obviously, it's moving up with this whole Melvin Gordon thing, but like pre Melvin Gordon situation, he had an ADP of like round 9, which he's that's where even with Melvin Gordon doing this, I would touch him. I would take him round 9. I'm not touching him round 5, 6. No way. I think he's a good change of pace guy or a breather, we'll call it. Like you got the main running backs in the league that the guys that'll give him a little blow here or there. But yeah, there's no, if you're taking him in round 5, you're going to be probably maybe disappointed.
I think everybody forgets like what he looked like.
Yeah, he was actually Justin Jackson looked better than
much better.
Eckler. So, and like I don't want either one of those guys. I mean, if he dips into the 8th round and he's their go-to guy, I'd probably draft him then because you're getting a starting running back.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
Like I've talked about before, if you're going wide receiver to start your draft, that's somebody you might look at later on in the 6th, 7th, 8th round, where he could have that full workload as long as Melvin Gordon's out, or at least be sharing time with Justin Jackson. And, you get that kind of workload with, the receivers that you're going to get. That's a guy then I would look at as Eckler. But
even at 6, 7, you got to know that Melvin Gordon's missing significant time, though, because otherwise you're just guessing at that point.
Absolutely. So we'll get into Keenan Allen now. Keenan Allen, obviously, he seems like a guy that's really for some reason just sliding. I don't know why. Like when I started doing drafts, he was the middle of the 2nd round. Now you're getting him at the end of the 3rd round. Like I don't know what happened to Keenan Allen in the last month that made him drop around, but it's almost crazy. Like he's becoming one of the best values in the draft, especially in PPR leagues to me.
Yeah, Keenan Allen is pretty dominant. When you look at all of his just everything. I mean, he was the 11th most targeted wide receiver last year. He was basically number 2 in target share rate for the entire season. It's just, I don't know. To me,
Phillip Rivers has such a good connection with Keenan Allen. They are on it. They are on it 100%.
Yeah. I mean, to me, he's just super, super safe. Like of all the receivers that you can think of in the league, that you're like, okay, you know, this guy, that guy. You know, me and you were high on Mike Evans this year. Keenan Allen's safer than Mike Evans. You know what I mean? Like, Mike Evans has shown you years where he has 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. I mean, Keenan Allen, he's not dependent on touchdowns. The dude's going to catch almost 100 balls every year, if not more than 100 balls every year, and he's going to be 12 to 1,400 yards every year. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not dependent on Keenan Allen to score me 12 touchdowns like I am with Mike Evans sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just think
he's big with PPR.
Yeah, he's a dominant PPR wide receiver, and you know I feel, especially if I go running back, I love that I can get him in the third. That like makes me really happy.
Yeah, I would love to if that trend continues with the if he's going in that third round, then I ain't gonna say nothing. I'll let my other. I don't think he's going to go to the end of the third round in our league because I know one of you knuckleheads will scoop him up before that. So I ain't getting him into no late third round. But in my other leagues, if he's sitting there. Shit, I'll be doing jumping jacks, put that name up on the board late third round. I've been big on Keenan. He's a super talent. He's great for PPR, which most of the leagues are now. So, yep.
Yeah, I mean, if you're starting like, all right, even if let's say you're getting like, all right, so his ADP right now is round 2, pick 12. So now, according to Fantasy Calculator, his draft stock hasn't been dropping as much as maybe what I've been seeing. I've been doing drafts every day, and he's going in the third round. So, if you're starting your team off in those first 4 guys, with one of those first 4 guys, and you get let's say you get Ezekiel Elliott, and then you come back and you're able to get Damian Williams, then in the third round you grab Keenan Allen. It's a hell of a start to your draft with a ton of upside.
Oh yeah, because you got the safety of the safest running back in fantasy football, with the upside of a possible top 5 guy, and then to have a solid Keenan Allen, that's great.
Yeah, I love Keenan Allen, especially in PPR leagues. The only thing with Keenan Allen that he's not gonna get the touchdowns that the elite guys get, which is why he's not one of the elite guys. I don't see like top 5 upside with Keenan Allen because of that. Because he doesn't score the touchdowns I guess he's matched Julio last year, but Julio just goes crazy with yardage. But Devontae Adams is getting double-digit touchdowns. Even Tyreek Hill's getting double-digit touchdowns. Hopkins got double-digit touchdowns. Keenan Allen last year I think had 7 touchdowns. So, he just hasn't been a touchdown guy in the past, and that's kind of the one reason that I think he's kind of not considered, up there with those other elite guys like the Odell Beckham types, because those guys have double-digit touchdowns written all over them. All right, so let's get into Hunter Henry. All right, Hunter Henry is a guy that I know Steve is not as high on as some of these other experts, are. They're drafting him with the Evan Ingram, O.J. Howard range. I agree. I'm not really – he's definitely the bottom of those 3 and probably a whole round later to me, because I'd much rather have O.J. Howard or Evan Ingram over him. How do you guys feel about Hunter Henry? Why don't you just explain a little bit, Steve?
It's not really that I'm down on Hunter Henry. I do think he's a top 6 guy. You know what I mean? Like, I do think he'll finish that way. I just don't feel like he has the – I feel like other analysts are saying that he could possibly be a top 3 or 4 guy, and I don't see that. You know what I mean? I think, especially in that offense. You know what I mean? Now, you put Hunter Henry, a healthy Hunter Henry, in a New England Patriots offense, then I'd be really fucking interested. Yeah. But in this offense, you got Keenan Allen that, is just a shifty guy that gets open all the time. You got Melvin Gordon, if he plays, who catches the ball out of the backfield. There's just a lot of, there's a lot of targets to go around. Mike Williams, I think they're going to try to get more involved. You got the deep threat in Travis Benjamin. There's just, I don't know. It's just, to me, this is not a Kansas City Chiefs offense where they're going to throw for 5,000 yards. So I have to depend on touchdowns with Hunter Henry, which, we all know could be like a really high number with Phillip Rivers, because Antonio Gates and him had that rapport. But I think Antonio Gates and his rapport was something special. You know what I mean? I don't know if Hunter Henry missing an entire season is going to have that same rapport coming back this year. Maybe next year. Yeah, next year I'm probably going to be all in on Hunter Henry. But this year, I'm going to ease myself into Hunter Henry.
I like Hunter Henry for touchdowns this year. I think that there's going to be a lot more tight ends out there that produce more yardage than he will. But I do think that the Chargers are going to score a lot of points, and I think they're going to utilize him a lot in the red zone. So I do like him for touchdowns. I think I don't see his upside in the top three. I just think there's three tight ends are just way above everybody else. I could see him finishing 4, 5, 6, where I think he's projected 6, around that 6 range. So I think that's all accurate. I think he's going to have a decent season with a good amount of touchdowns. But I'm not huge on him. I'm not down on him. I'm just more of a observer, like you said, Steve. See how this year goes for him, and then evaluate him a little more as he's back for the full year, and go from there. So I'm more of an observer on Hunter Henry, unless he drops in drafts and I need tight end, and he's at a good value.
Yeah, last year they threw the ball to the running backs a lot more than they have in the past. Austin Eckler, we talked about him a little bit. He is a good receiving back out of the backfield. So he is a guy that, they will still get involved in the passing game. Melvin Gordon can catch the ball out of the backfield. He showed that last year. He actually did much better last year, I feel like, than other years. If that kind of that's the trend to watch. Is he taking those running back targets away, or is he, are the running backs still getting those targets? Like, he's not getting Tyrell Williams targets. Tyrell Williams targets are going to probably Mike Williams or Travis Benjamin. Like, Tyrell Williams is strictly more of a deep play, deep threat guy. So they're not the targets that Hunter Henry is going to take. The Hunter Henry's targets are going to come largely from what you saw last year with the running backs getting a lot of dump down work. If those check downs wind up going to him instead of the running backs, Hunter Henry could have a big year because he's going to get some touchdowns. Tight ends in the red zone, especially with Philip Rivers a quarterback, he's going to get some red zone touchdowns. It's all going to be about how many targets he can get, and if he's able to, turn those targets into yardage, because that's something that he hasn't done in the past. I don't think he's ever had a 100-yard game in his career, and
his yards are low.
He's played 3 seasons, and he only played 13 games. That's another thing you gotta always consider. He's been in the league for 3 years and hasn't even played a full season worth of games yet. Also, he's a guy coming off the ACL, and we've talked about it. He could have those hamstring injuries. It could be soft tissue, problems with him. So he's just a guy that I'm staying away from, because he's not a very safe player. And, if you're taking a guy that high, you're missing out on other values at other positions. Before I draft Hunter Henry, I'd rather wait for, Delaney Walker, guys in that range, like I've been preaching. Next is Mike Williams. Do you guys see any regression from Mike Williams? I mean, last year he had 11 total touchdowns, 1 rushing, 10 receiving. He really came on. I mean, he was basically a deep prey threat. He was one of those guys you just aired, like a lot when we talked about with Cortland Sutton. Like, he was just a guy you just seemed like he just ran up the field and they were airing the ball up to him, and he looked like he was big enough to go up and get that ball. Do you see any regression from him this year? Do you see more work with Tyrell Williams gone? Do you think he steps up and is even more productive? How do you guys see Mike Williams performing this year?
So, all right. So Mike Williams was my favorite wide receiver coming out of that draft class. I like his contested catch rate. He's just a dude that would win all the 50-50 balls in college. And those are the kind of receivers I like.
N'Keal Harry.
Yeah, N'Keal Harry. So, for me, I think he has a lot of upside. My issue with him is that Philip Rivers is getting older. He's having more and more trouble getting the ball down the field, and that scares me a little bit. You know what I mean? If you notice some of his balls last year, and I watched Philip Rivers a lot because, they were on prime time a lot last year. I want to say it was like 5 games or something. But
have Philip Rivers in our league?
I did not have Philip Rivers. No, I had Andrew Luck. But I did have him in other leagues that I'm in, and his downfield arm strength was not what it used to be, and he was never like a super bomb it out guy, but it just seems to be getting worse and worse as he's getting older, obviously. But Mike Williams is the guy who had 66 targets last year. He ranked number 65 in the league in total targets. That's not really that's not promising, for me. He had 8 red zone receptions. He had, his air yards is kind of what makes you want to be like, okay, he's getting deep targets, and that's kind of what you want in fantasy football. But in the same breath, I would like more targets than 66, and I don't know how many more targets he's going to get than that. So, it just makes me a little bit nervous drafting him.
Yeah, I really like Mike Williams. I mean, you said how dominant Sammy Watkins was at Clemson. I mean, Mike Williams was he was unbelievable at Clemson. He ran the wide receiving core in college. So I'm kind of going to put him in the same boat as the guy we talked about on a recent podcast as Tyler Lockett. Basically, I think Mike Williams will not have that 10, 11 touchdowns. Just like I said with Lockett, I think that'll go down a little bit, but I think his targets and his touch and his yards go up. And I think he's going to slowly go up each year as he just gets better and more familiar. But he's got the potential to be a really, really good receiver in this league for a long time. He's super talented. It's just going to be about how long Rivers can continue playing at a pretty high level that he's at. So I definitely see a little bit of regression with the touchdowns, but I think the yards definitely go up. But I like Mike Williams. I mean, the kid is extremely talented, and I would definitely like to take him in the later rounds. I think he has another great year.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Dan. I think you could see regression in his touchdowns, but I do think his targets are going to go up with Tyrell Williams there. I don't think that Travis Benjamin really, to me, is that talented. He's never really showed anything. I think he had that 1 year when he was at Cleveland where, he had a couple deep passes. Other than that, to me, I think a lot of that workload from Tyrell Williams last year is going to go to Mike Williams. And I think, like you said, I think you can see a little bit of regression in touchdowns because 11 touchdowns in a year is a lot for a number 2 receiver in an offense. But I do see him getting more than 62 targets than he had last year. And I definitely can see him having more receptions, more yards. He's not a bad flyer. Right now I think he's going in like that, 5th, 6th round. And, he's not a bad guy. You compare him, you're basically in the same range as the DJ Moores. You're in the same round of Jarvis Landry, Alshon Jeffrey, Tyler Boyd. A few of those guys I like more. A few guys I like. He's kind of in the middle of those guys. So it's all about how you're feeling about some of the other players around him. But he's definitely, to me, not a player that I'm shying away from. It's all about who's left at that position and which players I'm a little higher on. So Phillip Rivers, I don't really think there's much to touch on about Phillip Rivers. We all have him outside of our top 12. He's probably one of the best two quarterback guys to get. He's like right on the edge of that QB1 for us. So he's probably 14, 15. That's like an excellent QB1 or QB2 in a 2 quarterback league to grab. Not really much to add on that. I mean, he's not a bad guy to wait for. If you're you want to wait on quarterback. But there's also other guys you can get in there. You can get Jameis Winston, take a flyer on him. Dak Prescott's shown that he can be a top 5, 6 quarterback in the NFL. There's probably other gambles you want to take if you're waiting that long on quarterback before you take Phillip Rivers. Yeah.
For me, he's like you said, I have him ranked at, I think, like 13 or 14. And it's just because he's not sexy. You know what I mean? Like, I do think
Ben Roethlisberger are the mirror images of each other.
Yeah, they're just, they're the old non-sexy guys. You know what you're getting from them. You're getting 4,000 yards. You're getting
30 touchdowns.
Yeah, you're getting 28 to 32
every year,
touchdowns.
like clockwork.
Yep,
clockwork. 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns. It's clockwork. It's And it's good to have. I mean, for someone that's a little more conservative, he's a safe pick, and safe picks sometimes can win you your league. Yeah. But I mean, he's definitely not going to. He's not. You're not going to see a 2019 40 or 45 touchdown season coming from Phillip Rivers. You know, some of the other younger guys, Kyler Murray.
He might be airing that ball out. If Melvin Gordon's not there, you might see a lot of Phillip Rivers throwing the ball. But
listen,
you're not lying. You're not lying.
Yep,
I'll tell you what, he becomes a whole lot more sexy if Melvin Gordon doesn't play. Because I'm telling you, those fucking running backs suck. Like I don't like to say guys suck, but I don't know what everybody fucking saw in Austin Eckler last year that impressed them. You know, he was the scat back for a team that had a dominant running back, and when he came on the field, defenses were just like, who the fuck is this guy? And then, oh shit, like where the fuck did he go? I mean, like it wasn't. He wasn't never game plan for. Who the fuck game plans for Austin Eckler? No one. They have no fucking tape on this guy. He came in and had some good games, and then guess what? When he became the guy, he did nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Shit the bed. All right, so that kind of ends our Chargers talk. We're going to get into the Raiders. This is going to be about as quick as any team in that we're going to go through. We'll start it off with Antonio Brown. You think Antonio Brown is still an elite, in that top 5 range with Derek Carr as his quarterback? Do you think he drops down without Big Ben? How do you feel about Antonio coming into this year? New team, new system, new coach, new everything. Is he still the same guy?
I'll let you go, Dan.
Yeah, I think he is. Antonio Brown doesn't really. Antonio Brown plays for Antonio Brown. He don't play for the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Oakland Raiders. Antonio Brown plays for Antonio Brown. He is a guy that cares about his stats, cares about his image, and he puts the time in. And to me, he's still a top 5. We've seen more consistency coming from Ben Roethlisberger than we've seen from Carr. Carr shit the bed last year, horrible. But we've also seen Carr have good seasons. I mean, he definitely was, he was definitely better than his brother. His brother was really bad, but his brother also had no offensive line. But I think I don't know if I quite see top 5 upside this year. I'm going to place Antonio Brown in your 5 to 10. I just think that other guys are going to be a little bit more productive. And also because we've touched on it too. Sorry, in a minute. We've also touched on it too with John Gruden that he is a ground and pound kind of head coach too. So how much is he really going to utilize a top receiver? He most of his game planning. He's got this young sexy running back coming out of Alabama. So I mean, that might be a route that he wants to take rather than giving Antonio Brown 150 balls this year. But it's Antonio Brown. You can't deny the fact that he's going to be relevant.
Yeah, he's awesome. The fucking dude is amazing.
Relevant is more than what he's. He'd be way more than relevant.
Yeah, he's awesome. Okay, so Antonio Brown was number 2 in targets last year, 169.
Yeah, he was
tied for number 2.
Yeah, tied with Devontae Adams.
Yeah, tied for targets. He basically never leaves the field. He's
always around.
Yeah, he's going to be on the field at all times. He had 104 receptions last year. He had 1,297 yards last year. He had air yards. He had 863, which ranked number 8. He's just awesome. There's no other way to say it. And I know me and Kev talked about this on our podcast before we did before we started doing this. But, okay, so the question that we kind of gave everybody was, did Ben Roethlisberger make Antonio Brown, or did Antonio Brown make Ben Roethlisberger? And I think we came up with, I don't know if you agree, Kev, but I'm pretty sure we both came up with the consensus that Antonio Brown, Ben Roethlisberger had never thrown for 4,000 yards before Antonio Brown. He didn't miss a 4,000-yard season after Antonio Brown got to that team. I mean, he hit 4,000 yards consistently every single year that Antonio Brown was on the field. You know, Antonio Brown just he made him better, and it's not like Ben Roethlisberger didn't have good wide receivers. He had Antoine Randall, who was pretty good. He had Hines Ward, which everybody knows Hines Ward is great. He had Plexico Burress. I mean, it's not like he had shit wide receivers before he had Antonio Brown. He had Antonio Brown, and his numbers skyrocketed. I'm talking about 400 or 500 yards more per season. You're talking probably 8 touchdowns more per season. On a total basis. To me, I don't think Antonio Brown doesn't drop off almost at all with David Carr, because I think he can make David Carr a much better quarterback, because I don't think David Carr is a bad quarterback. I just think he's Derek Carr. I'm sorry, Derek Carr. I mean, I don't think David Carr
is a bad quarterback.
I don't think Derek Carr is a bad quarterback. I think he is just he's not a jag. I mean, he had almost an MVP season. And if he can play well enough, play anywhere close to what he played in that season, Antonio Brown is going to be just fine.
Yeah, I have Antonio Brown ranked number 7. Antonio Brown has number one overall wide receiver upside. I mean, the guy he's the best receiver for his size. He's the best receiver since Jerry Rice. Like, bar none, for his size. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, obviously, you got your T.O.s, Randy Mosses, those kind of guys. They had elite size to go up and get the ball. Like, he doesn't have that kind of size. Like, he's 6'1", like.
He still comes down with that ball, like, every time. You put that ball in his area, he just has a knack for catching the football.
He is. He is. He's been the most consistent wide receiver over the past 5 years. I don't think you're going to have an issue with him necessarily. The issue might be Derek Carr. That could be the only thing that holds Antonio Brown back, is if Derek Carr is, plays the way he has the last 2 years and not the way he did, 3 years ago when he was the MVP, one of the MVP candidates. One thing I do like is, if you remember, man, Michael Crabtree was a monster in the red zone with Derek Carr. I could see Antonio Brown being similar to what Michael Crabtree was. And I can see him he's almost a lock for double-digit touchdowns, even in this offense. It's not a good team. It's not a good offense. I don't think that they're going to surprise people and be good this year. But, he's definitely a lock for double-digit touchdowns.
Yeah, comparing Michael Crabtree to Antonio Brown is basically comparing a shit sandwich to the greatest hoagie you've ever eaten in your entire life. He's that much better. It's literally close.
I was saying what Crabtree.
Oh no. Yeah, I'm not. I understand your comparison. I'm just saying, you were saying how with Crabtree he did this.
Oh, yeah.
With Antonio Brown, Antonio Brown 100%. Not only does he have double-digit touchdown upside, the dude has 15 touchdown upside. He does.
Upside. I think lock. I think he's a lock for double-digit touchdowns.
Yes.
Like, I don't think you're getting less than 10 touchdowns. The only thing I could see is his targets and receptions going down, just because Derek Carr is not as good a quarterback as Ben Roethlisberger. But when they get into the red zone, they're looking for Antonio Brown, because mainly they have nobody else to throw the ball to in that area. Their tight end, Jared Cook, he's gone. Crabtree and Cooper, both gone. Tyrell Williams is a deep guy. He's not really a red zone target. Like, they have nobody else to throw the ball to. I think he's a lock for double-digit touchdowns this year.
Yeah, I think not only is he a lock for double-digit touchdowns, I think he's a lock for 175 targets. He's going to see 175 targets, and I don't see. Barring injury, he's going to see 175 targets.
Yeah, he would have led the league last year if he didn't get benched from week 17. He would have definitely got more than one target and surpassed Julio Jones in that game. So now we'll move on. Next is Josh Jacobs, a rookie running back they drafted in the first round. Steve's talked about it in the past with Cadillac Williams, and when John Gruden drafted Cadillac Williams, man, he rode him. He didn't ride Cadillac like a Cadillac. He rode Cadillac like a freaking Ford truck. Like he just did. He used and abused them in his rookie year. So, could you see similar workload with Josh Jacobs this year? Could you? Is he going to be the third down back? Do they use Jalen Richard in the passing game? What is the upside for Josh Jacobs?
Josh Jacobs, believe it or not, in that offense, if Derek Carr, this is what I'll say. If Derek Carr plays at a top 15 quarterback in the league, and I'm not just talking about fantasy, I'm talking about, yardage-wise, touchdown-wise, as a top 15 guy, Jacobs could be a top 10 running back. He could, because, we've seen it. We've literally watched it on the field. And I know the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line is amazing, but how often did you ever see Le'Veon seeing 8-9 man boxes? Never. He never saw them. And that's, to me, that's a contributing factor to why the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line is so damn good. Because when you have Antonio Brown on the outside, guess what? You ain't creeping that safety up. I'm sorry, because guess what? Antonio Brown is a threat to score on every play. So, if Derek Carr can be in the top half of the league in passing, Brandon Jacobs has top 10 running back upside, because he's not going to see 8-man boxes with Tyrell Williams' speed on the outside and Antonio Brown on the outside. Their offensive line is they got Trenton Brown, who is he was just an animal last year. He only let up 3.5 sacks last year. Played okay, so everybody wanted to talk about how Sony Michel played in the playoffs. I go back and watch the playoffs and watch how dominant Trent Brown was. They were running behind that fucking guy the entire playoffs long, and that's why Sony Michel had such a good playoffs. That dude was making huge holes for Sony Michel to run behind, and it was not close. They would, literally, dudes were he was blowing dudes off the line like they weren't there. So, Josh Jacobs has top 10 upside. I don't, he wasn't my favorite running back coming out of this draft, but if he gets used the way Cadillac, even a fraction of what Cadillac got, if he gets 250 touches, he's going to be really, really, really good.
Yeah, in his whole entire Alabama career, he basically had as many carries as a regular, running back has in one season. So there's not a lot of wear on this guy's tires. He's, he's a rookie that basically has the amount of carries that one, guy would have in one season. So he doesn't, and we talked about it last time that, when you take a person's overall carries into consideration and how much time they have left to be elite or be productive, you have to throw in the college carries, because Division I especially playing for schools like Alabama and Oklahoma, in some most of these guys are getting drafted in the NFL, so they're top defensemen. But I'm big on him. I think I love that he's going to John Gruden's team. I love that Antonio Brown is there to, like you said, to take away from some of the safeties creeping up, or even you can't cheat on him as much, so he's going to have more running lanes. So I definitely, I'm definitely curious to see how he does for his rookie year. I think they're going to use him a lot. 300 carries. You guys see 300 carries for him this year, barring health?
I could definitely see like 250. I don't know about 300. 300's kind of high, especially in the league nowadays.
Yeah,
that's
Todd Gurley.
Yeah, that's Todd Gurley, and
it's 250, 275. I think they're going to use him a lot, and it's just I'm big on him. He's definitely, I don't see anybody really taking away too much of his workload, even though he's only a rookie and we don't really know what we're going to get out of him yet. But he's a kid from Alabama, so he's definitely got a good head.
Football. That's the one thing. I mean, he doesn't have the wear and tear on the tires, but those Alabama running backs, man, in practices and all that,
they are
beat up. Like that is the toughest. It's been talked about. Like that's the toughest competition, to fight for playing time there is. Like, and if you look at some of the Alabama running backs, some of them just by the time they get to the NFL, they look done. Like Trent Richardson looked done. I mean, he had one good year, and his rookie year was semi good, and it was done after that. Mark Ingram's been pretty good.
Derrick Henry's starting to come into his own.
Henry's
Mark Ingram was beat up when he first came in the league. If you remember his rookie year, he was not good.
Yeah, and Derrick Henry, I don't even like Derrick Henry as much as what other people do. I think Derrick Henry did last year what he did the year before, and everybody gets high on Derrick Henry, and then he really shows what he really is. That's my feeling on Derrick Henry. Like, it just Alabama running backs, man, they get to the NFL and a lot of them struggle. I'm not saying all of them. They've definitely had their fair share that have succeeded, but I think Jacobs in this offense could be very good mainly because I think Gruden is going to ride him until the wheels fall off of him. So yeah, I took him in our auction draft. I think I got him for like $22 in our auction draft as my second running back, and I'm happy with that. I think you're getting him in the third round. I wouldn't draft him to be my number one running back. So if I was in that area and I went wide receiver, I don't know if I'm drafting him to be my number one, just for he's a rookie. You never know what those rookies are going to do. I might try to look other areas. I mean, Devontae Freeman's slipping into the third round now. Like, he's definitely a guy I'd rather take before Josh Jacobs. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely, to me, a very good. He's top tier of the running back twos. Tyrell Williams, you guys think worth a shot? I think he's a good shot to take in best ball leagues. But other than that, I'm not a big Tyrell Williams guy.
Yeah, what is his ADP? I want to say it's like round 12 or something like that. Isn't it 12 something? In that range, I definitely think
12-10.
12-10. So in that range, I think he's one of the better later guys to get, only because I do think he'll get some deep targets. Derek Carr is not really a deep thrower all that much, but to keep the defense honest and to take some pressure off of Antonio Brown, I do think they're going to use him in that role. And they paid him pretty good fucking money. They gave him, I think it was $44 million or something.
Yeah.
They gave him a big contract, so I think they're definitely going to use him. I think he might be a pleasant surprise if, like I said, if Derek Carr can play in the top half of the league at the quarterback position and be, anywhere from 15 to 10. I do think that both these wide receivers could be viable. Well, obviously Antonio Brown is one of the most viable wide receivers, but I think he could be an okay number 3, maybe a flex.
Yeah, I like him. I think he's had some mediocre last couple seasons. He did have a 1,000-yard receiving season 3 years ago, so he did break onto the scene as an above average wideout, but I definitely think I could see another. I don't see huge breakout potential, but I could see 900 to 1,000-yard receiving season. Just really depends on which route John Gruden's taking that offense. I mean, we touched on, are they going to be ground and pound, or are they going to open it up with Carr and Antonio Brown? And Antonio Brown's for sure always going to get the number one cornerback, and so we don't know. We don't know what kind of looks Williams is going to get, but I could see a decent season from him. I think where his ADP is, I think that's you'll have pretty good value out of him because he's got some upside.
Yeah, for me, he's probably just the best ball guy for me. I like other guys in that area that, like I've talked about it. I like take a shot at young guys in that area. Andy Isabella is a guy who's going like a round later. I'd rather take a shot on Andy Isabella, especially if that offense there clicks. Andy Isabella could be good in his first year. Just other guys in that range. Paris Campbell, another guy I like taking a shot on there. I just don't think Derek Carr is a very good quarterback personally. I think he had one very good year and kind of blew his load that year, and since then he got hurt and kind of got shell-shocked and hasn't been the same since. So for me, like I said, I just got other guys in that area I'd rather take a shot on. When it comes to Derek Carr, I don't think anybody's really drafting Derek Carr at this point. He's mostly probably just a two quarterback league guy, and he's probably the end of the quarterback twos. Probably number 20 or so. So no real reason to get into him too much. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Anybody else you want to bring up on any team that we may have missed tonight? You know what? I do. Because I actually texted you guys and told you we were going to do this, and I totally forgot when we did it. Carlos Hyde. We did not talk about Carlos Hyde when we talked about the Kansas Chiefs. Right now, Carlos Hyde, I think, is going pretty much kind of in round 9, maybe, where Royce Freeman is going. Is it? No, he's going round 10. So he's going right with Jerick McKinnon, Damian Harris, Deontay Foreman, right around that area. I'd much rather have all three of those guys over Carlos Hyde. Carlos Hyde doesn't seem like a guy who's winding up on too many of my teams this year.
I think the more news that comes out for Damian Williams, the lower he'll drop.
Yeah.
And if I can get him in
12.
Yeah, 12, 13, I'll take a flyer on him because just like what we said, we don't know how healthy Damian Williams is going to be. And I do think if Damian Williams gets hurt, he will get the bulk load of the carries. So, he's a guy that, and I know people are talking up Darwin Thompson, but I don't think Darwin Thompson is going to be anything this year. Maybe down the road, but not anything this year. So, and like I said, I do think he's going to get some goal line work. I don't know if he's going to get all the goal line work because, like I said, Damian Williams was pretty good in the goal line this year, this past year. So, but I do think he's going to, spell Damian Williams, and if Damian Williams goes down, he'll be the direct backup.
Yeah, I think to just touch on it real quick. I think he's in a good position now. He doesn't have to worry about being that lead back. He can spell Williams, and he was awful last year. Carlos Hyde was so bad. He was getting thrown around from team to team. And
I think in the beginning when he was with Cleveland, he wasn't terrible.
Actually, with Cleveland, he did it. He actually was okay, and then he
got traded to Jacksonville, and
the Jacksonville situation was really rough.
He had his shot there, and he was terrible there. But I don't think with Cleveland he was that bad. They just traded him because I think they wanted to give Nick Chubb the work.
Yeah. But
3 carries for 100 yards. You better get that motherfucker the ball.
I think if you can get him in the 10th round, I think it's a good pick in the 10th round. I think it's a really good pick in the 10th round because you don't. We've touched on it. You don't know what you're going to get out of Damian Williams. The guy's been around for a few years. He's been beat up, and can he handle this workload of this juggernaut offense in Kansas City? So that all remains to be seen.
Yeah, he is one guy that I think is a good handcuff. Especially if he dips into the 11th, 12th, 13th round, he is a guy that I would use to handcuff Damian Williams because I agree. I think that if Damian Williams gets hurt, Carlos Hyde is going to take over that number one role. So yeah, if I start to see his position slide, I think 10 is a little too high for a handcuff. And like I said, in that area, I think Deontay Foreman is going to be big. We'll talk about him when we get to that division. I think Deontay Foreman might take that job. Jerick McKinnon, I think, is going to be relevant, even if Tevin Coleman is relevant. Damian Harris, we'll get into him. He's another guy we're going to get into when we talk about the AFC East. So in this area, he's a little too high. But if he dips into that 11th, 12th, 13th round, he's a solid handcuff. So with that, we'll close it out for tonight. Remember, if you're listening, check us out on the website, www.fourthandinchesff.com. That is www.4THNINCHESFF.com. And hit that subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating to stay in touch with us. All right. Peace out, guys.
All right. Peace out. Until the next time, guys.